3, 2, 1. So we're going to take our drawings and turn them into a coloring book, pretty much. So what we need to do is, first of all, we're going to open up the drawing. What I've done is I've taken a picture of this after I outlined it in black and white. And I'm going to open it up in Photoshop. Once you have your drawing in Photoshop, the goal of this is to turn it into basically a coloring book, right? And it's really important that you have those black and white lines, black lines really drawn well, because we need that strong contrast for this. And so, very first thing that we're going to do is put a threshold layer on this drawing. Because what that's going to do is it's going to bring the contrast up so we only have black and white instead of shades of gray. So I will go to my adjustment layer icon in my layers panel, and I'll scroll down until I get to threshold. I'll put the threshold layer on it, and you can see that instantly turns it black and white. I can adjust it. If I go too far, it's going to pick up some of those areas of gray. If I go too low, it's going to wash it out. And once I have it just right, I'm going to be good with that. What I want to do at this point is I want to commit that edit to make that permanent. So right now the threshold layer is a non-destructive edit. I can turn it on and turn it off by clicking that eye icon. So what I want to do is to select that layer, the threshold layer, right click, and go down to merge down. So now it's just black and white, and I'll be able to edit it. You can see that I have the rings of my drawing, my sketchbook, on the left hand side. So what I need to do is to crop those away. So I'm going to go over to my toolbar. I'm going to select the crop tool and just drag the corner of each upper left, and in this case lower right, until I crop that image enough to get rid of the extra space that I don't need. Once I've done that, I need to delete my background. And if I just delete the background as it is, there's nothing below it. And so what I want to do is have a transparent layer below this layer, so when I delete this background, it just reveals the layer below it. So I'll click on my new layer icon, and I'm going to drag that down below the layer, which is my drawing. Then I'm going to come over to my quick selection tool, and if your quick selection tool isn't selected, you can see it might be the magic wand or it might be object selection, but we really want to have this quick selection tool. And what I'm going to do then is to first of all make sure I have the right layer selected, which is my drawing, and then I'm just going to click and drag, except that now it has too much, so there we go. And I'll just keep going until I get the background selected on my drawing. And you can see as I click and drag that, it just puts a nice marching ant selection over everything. And then when I just press delete, it takes it away. So now that back layer is transparent. You'll see the marching ants are still there, so we need to deselect that by going to either select, deselect, or another quick option is to press Command D. So that's a key that you should probably learn, Command D. Okay, once we've done that, I want to turn this into a true coloring book. If I zoom in a little bit, you'll notice that there are some spaces. And those spaces are going to cause my colors to run. And so what we need to do is kind of build a dam to keep that river of color contained within it. And I'll do that by using my paintbrush, and I'll reset my colors here so it's black and white. And then I'm going to make that a lot smaller just so that I can paint with black. And dam up those areas that I want to keep constrained. And right now my brush is fairly soft, so I want to make it pretty crisp. So I do that again by going up into my options panel. And I'll look through my drawing, and I can see that some of the cat whiskers didn't make it quite as well when I deleted, so I can put those back in. I'm going to crisp up that edge just a little bit, and then in the armpit of this little kitty cat, let's go ahead and do that. Look around, and maybe I can add some of the details that didn't translate or I forgot to draw. And so same thing on this dog foot. I'm just going to go ahead and add some of the parts that may be missing or got deleted, because that always happens. So we're just doing touch-ups right now. And in this case, I think what I'd like to do is have the belly of this dog a different color. So I'm just going to make a line curved going across, just like that. And I'll look around and I can see that there's a little white space in his mouth. And I think overall that's pretty good. And now actually as I look at it, this line for the belly doesn't look quite right. So I'm just going to undo that and maybe bring the belly area down just a little bit. I'll go back and retouch the mouth. Okay, so now what we have is this coloring book that we can add color to and start to play around with. So the way that we want to do this is by going to the paint bucket, and we're going to choose different colors. So, you know, I think of cats and dogs as cat and dog colors. I mean, they come in a variety, but I'm going to make this dog sort of brown, and so I'll choose a color that looks like that, and then I'll go and just simply click in the areas that I want to have be that color, which is most of this dog. And then I can choose a different color for his belly, maybe a little bit lighter, and maybe around the eyes as well. And maybe the nose, let's just make it a nice pink nose. Maybe not that pink, maybe a little bit more red, somewhere in here like that. That's kind of, there we go. Okay, so I've got my dog painted, and then if I zoom in I can see that there are some areas that I might need to touch up, and so if I miss that, then I can go to my selecting the foreground color, use my eyedropper, and select the color that I want to put in there, and just carefully add it. Okay, dog's looking good, and we'll just darken his belly button too. And this area here, I guess we'll just make that darker brown as well. You could spend some time and do something different on it. Then my cat, I want to do the same thing. Let's color it. I'm thinking for this one, don't want it to be brown. Instead, I'd like it to be sort of a gray color, and maybe sort of a, there might be like a little bit of a bluish tone to it. I don't want it to be too dark, so that looks good. I'll go through and just color. It's a magic coloring book. Photoshop's pretty awesome for that. Add some down here. I'll zoom out and see how we're good. Okay, so I've got my basic idea here, and it's fine like this, but if you want to add more, it's probably time to get out the paintbrush tool and make some changes to the paintbrush and give it some different texture. What I want to do for this is create a new layer, and on that layer, this is going to be the layer that I paint over this image. And what I want to do is to clip it to the layer below. A clipping mask actually allows you to paint only on top of the pixels of the layer below it. So you can see in the cat and dog layer, I've got a lot of emptiness around the image, around the cat and dog. And if I create a clipping layer by right-clicking on that empty layer and choose Create Clipping Mask, that's going to allow me then to paint directly on only the pixels that are showing. So let me show you what I mean by that. So I need to choose my paintbrush tool, and I'm actually going to edit the paintbrush itself. So I'm going to go up to Window. I'm going to go down to Brushes so that shows up over here. In an earlier lesson, I showed you guys how to change the paintbrush settings. And so first of all, I'm going to choose a brush, maybe a dry media brush. Be kind of interesting, just to give it a little bit of texture. And then I can change my brush settings here with the spacing. And as I drag that, it gives it a little bit more of a loose texture, which is what I want for this. So I'm going to maybe zoom in just a little bit to see how this looks. I will choose a different color. In this case, maybe I'll choose the lighter of the browns. It maybe actually make it a little bit orange, just for fun. I can change the opacity for this, and if I want to make it just a little bit bigger, I could do that as well. And so then when I stroke on the animal, you'll see that it constrains it to whatever pixels are showing in that layer below, because I have that clipping mask on. Okay, and so I can do that and just give it, a little bit of a fun texture in there. But it also, I noticed that I missed the dog's finger over there, so I'll go back and maybe add some to that momentarily. So just painting, adding a bit of texture to it, making it look kind of fun. And I can change, the colors in there, maybe make it a little bit lighter as well. So add some highlights, up on the shoulders and the ears, maybe up on the face a little bit. No, maybe not that. I might want to make those textures just a little bit smaller so it doesn't totally cover up the parts I don't want. Maybe add some in the hair up here as well. I could do that multiple times until I'm happy. And probably go down here to do it as well. Make it bigger again. Just to have variations. Very rarely when you're creating art is the image going to have just a solid color. If you have it just solid color, it makes it look really flat. But when you add some highlights to it or mix up the colors a little bit, you can get some dimensionality to it, which is kind of fun to play with. And you'll see now, when I zoom out, just those little subtle changes added kind of a new dimension to my work here. Okay, so I've done that, and you can see when I go back to my layers panel and hide that layer, if I release the clipping mask, and zoom in, you'll notice that you can see where I actually painted, right? Because it's in that layer. However, when I choose that clipping mask, it just clips it directly to that lower layer. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the cat. But for this cat, I'm going to change the color to, you know what, let's go darker on this one. And then I'm going to make my brush smaller. I want to get kind of the zebra stripes on it, maybe, or tiger stripes, I guess. And I might change the spacing on it as well. It's a little bit loose. And so I can then just play around with it, add some different pattern, maybe on the arms a little bit, maybe make it a little bit darker under here as well, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And I can continue to do this. I can add more layers and clip that layer to the layers below, you know, if I want to do different adjustments, you know. So if I go to this layer and I change the blending mode, you can see that it does different things to it. I think for this one I'm just going to leave it at normal. So I'll just go through, quickly paint some of these up just a little bit more, and make some stripes for sure on the tail, just subtle. And you may have seen the hand show up, and what I'm doing is I'm pressing the space bar, and that actually allows me to drag my image around. So, you know, if it's hidden over here under my bar, under the layers and under the brush panel, then I'm just going to bring it back out, and then I can continue editing it. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good for now. I might make the stomach just a little bit lighter, because that could be kind of fun to have some lighter fur on there. And I'll make my brush bigger. Again, I'm pressing the brackets to make it bigger or smaller. So a little bit of a lighter belly. Maybe we'll make a little white spot on his forehead too, something like that. All right. So kind of happy overall with this. I did need to zoom in really quick and add that color. So I'll choose my paint bucket and change the color, and just fill that, and then I think I'm good. So once I have it all ready to go, now what I need to do is to add a background to it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is go to Unsplash to find a background. And I think it would be, of course, there we go. I think it would be fun to do some sort of space landscape or something like that. And I'll just choose one. Might be kind of interesting. I'd like to have some sort of background in it, some ground as well. So I'll just download that, and then I'll go back to Photoshop. Now, what I need to do is not open up that image that I downloaded. I'm going to place the image. And what that does is it actually puts the image within the existing document. So I'm going to go to File, scroll down to Place Embedded, and then I'll locate that in my downloads, and I'll click Place. I'll think for a minute. Now the proportions might be off a little bit, and that's okay. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit and bring it down a little bit just to move it into position. I'll apply that. Now you'll notice that the painting that I did is showing. And that's because if I look at my layers here, it is now clipped to this layer instead of my bottom layer. So I'm going to bring my background layer down all the way, and it looks like that removed my clipping mask. So I'm going to go back and make sure that that is clipped. Now, as I'm looking at this, the cat and the dog are pretty big front and center. That's fine. I think I want to maybe make them just a little bit smaller. So I will choose that layer, and I'll press Command T or Edit Free Transform. Okay, and then I'm going to then grab the corner here and make it smaller. And you'll see that as I do that, it looks like it did not delete all of the pixels when I cropped it. So what I'm going to do is go in here, and actually I also noticed that the painting is now off center. So I did not apply that edit to my image. So what I'm going to do is right click on the layer that's the clipping mask. I'm going to go to Merge Down. So now it's all in one layer. So now when I transform it, it's going to make it manageable. Okay, at this point, I could do a couple of things. I could use my selection tool and select it all. Or I can simply use my eraser, because we're doing a destructive edit here. And so I just want to take away all of those pixels, make sure I'm at 100%, make sure it's not a soft brush. I want it to be hard and crisp. And I'll go through and just delete all of that white space that's around my image that I don't want in there. Alright, so now I've got my cat and my dog hanging out in outer space, which looks a little bit funky, so I might bring him back down to earth just a little bit. And think about my next step, which is adding text. So once I have my cat and my dog placed in an interesting way, I need to add text. And so this is going to be the final step to making this design. So with this, I chose opposites attract. So what I'm going to do is type the words opposites attract, and it's super tiny at this point. So what I'm going to do is transform that layer, free transform, and then I can double click on that layer and get it all to where I want it to be. Okay, so now with opposites attract, I mean that's fine, but I'd like to change up the text just a little bit. So I'll select my type tool, and I can change the style of warp. In this case, I think what I'd like to do is maybe make a wave. Opposites attract. That looks kind of cool. I'll click OK. I might change my typeface. And so, again, I have to have my type tool selected and that layer selected in order to bring all this up. I might just try that for now. And I think I'm going to change the color as well. So let's make it bright red. And then I think I need to space these out a little bit. Let's maybe zoom out just a little bit so I can see here what the end result is. I want to have that up just a little bit. So I might make that space just a little bit bigger. Press return one more time. Maybe move it into space. Yeah, opposites attract. And then I might change the size of my dog and cat again, because as you can see, they're pretty small. Now I could spend some time and add other features, whether it might be like a rocket ship or something else in the back. But for now, that's good enough. So we turned our drawing into a coloring book. We deleted the background. We edited the colors by using a color fill and then also the paint brushes. Added a different background and then added text. So that's the essence of what this assignment is.